You know, when we think about World War II, our minds usually jump to these huge armies clashing, these massive, monolithic states at war. But right in the heart of the Third Reich, a completely different kind of story was playing out, a much quieter one. It's a story of incredible courage that, honestly, gets lost in the shuffle of history way too often. So today, we're going to dive into that overlooked chapter, the resistance from within Germany itself. And this, right here, is the question at the very heart of it all, isn't it? It's so easy for us to sit back and say, oh, I would have done the right thing. But imagine for a second, every voice around you, every institution, the entire weight of the government is demanding your total, unquestioning loyalty. What does it actually take to stand up and say no? Who are the people who make that choice? All right, so let's get into our first section here, silent defiance, the act of resistance. Because the first thing we have to establish, the most important point really, is that this wasn't some myth or a fairy tale. Despite the insane pressure and the terrifying danger, resistance inside Germany was very, very real. This quote from our source material, it seems so simple, but it is incredibly powerful. Some Germans resisted. Just those three words push back against the idea that the entire country was just marching in lockstep. Look, it may not have been some massive popular uprising, but every single one of these acts of defiance, no matter how small they seemed, was a crack in the foundation of the regime's power. So that leads to the next logical question, right? If people were resisting, who on earth were they? And the answer is fascinating. It's this incredibly diverse mix of people from all corners of German society. They weren't united by a political party or anything like that. They were united by conscience. First up, you've got students. I mean, just think about that for a second. Young people, like the kids in the White Rose movement, who had their whole lives ahead of them. But they saw the moral rot at the core of the state and just knew they had to do something. They risked absolutely everything, their education, their freedom, their futures, just to print and hand out leaflets begging their fellow Germans to wake up and see what was happening. And then you have the clergy. Priests, pastors, men and women of faith whose core beliefs put them on a direct collision course with the state's ideology of hate. From their pulpits, in their sermons, in their communities, they offered a different story, a defiant message of basic human decency in a horribly inhumane time. And this one might be the most surprising of all. Officers. We're talking about men from inside the German military. Think about that. These were individuals who, despite their oaths and their positions deep inside the state's machinery, saw the disaster their country was heading for. They decided their true duty wasn't to the regime, it was to humanity. And this brings us to the tough part of the story, the tragic, unavoidable reality of what they were doing. Section 3, the ultimate price. Because standing up to a totalitarian state isn't some abstract debate. It's not a game. It comes with the highest possible price tag. For these brave students, clergy, and officers, the cost wasn't just a prison sentence or being shunned by society. No, it was so much more than that. The cost was absolute. Remember that sentence we started with a little while ago? Some Germans resisted? Well, here's how that sentence ends. Many were executed. That was it. That was the regime's brutal, simple, and merciless answer to anyone who dared to dissent. For their courage, for their silent defiance, they paid with their lives. So you might be thinking, well, if they didn't actually stop the war or bring down the government, why does this matter so much? And that's a fair question. It's why we have our final section, A Legacy Remembered. Because even though they didn't succeed in the traditional sense, what they did is still so incredibly important. This definition really just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures what we've been talking about, and the two key parts are right there: immense personal risk and without widespread recognition. These people weren't doing it to be famous. They weren't looking for glory. Their actions were these quiet, often lonely acts of profound moral courage, done for one simple reason, because it was the right thing to do. And so that's the question I want to leave you with. In a world that still has plenty of its own oppression and demands for conformity, what can we learn from the echoes of these stories? They're a timeless, powerful reminder that even in the absolute darkest of times, a single human conscience can refuse to be put out.